Good morning, welcome to Radio Maria Ireland. That long hymn is very handy. It just buys us another minute or two in case we need extra time to get ready and get sorted. You're very welcome to Radio Maria Ireland for our morning Chatechesis this Saturday morning, the 22nd of October. And kindly joined by Roisín today in her bright red Ganzi. Welcome, Roisín.
Oh, thank you, Father. Yes, very welcome. It's wonderful to be here, and hello, everybody.
Indeed, great.
Hope you're all having a healthy day today.
Indeed, the sun is shining. It's nice and mild, in fact, for the latter end of October.
Yes, and the rain and the storms there.
Not the lights, yes, we've had our share. But mid-October, as I remember, 23rd of October it was, famous date back in 1987. I was in England at the time. There was a massive storm which kind of shut everything down. It's the time of year for storms. It's predictable enough that we're going to get high winds and a bit of rain and a bit of a dose. So what harm, we survive.
But with the lightning, Father, the whole sky was lit.
Yeah, here.
It was amazing.
It was very impressive. Yeah, I was driving home from the studio and it was in front of me in my face. I never saw it so spectacular here in Ireland now. Seen it elsewhere, right? But
that must have been scary.
It was the real deal. You know, great way to go. You know, like you wouldn't feel a thing.
Oh my goodness.
A slight tickling sensation as the hairs would rise. You know, the electrostatic.
Holy God!
And then it's all over.
Thank God you were all right, Father.
You're no fear. So now it's nice to have your company today, and good to be able to chat with you as well today. The feast day of optional memorial indeed, rather than a feast of St. John Paul II, a mega pope,
fantastic,
a mega saint. Yes, a million people gathered in Croke Park to welcome him, and hundreds of thousands, I suppose, when Pope Francis came. You were in the Phoenix Park.
In the Phoenix Park.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was mobbed, was it?
Oh, it was wonderful, Father, and it was like I had the pram with me with the children were young
at
the time, and it was like he was just looking directly at me.
Really?
I never forget it.
Wow.
It's just like it was amazing, Father.
And did he come around in the Pope mobile?
He came around all around because I was away good back now with the pram. You know?
Okay, yeah, wow. How did you bring the pram and all the children? It would have been a long walk in the Phoenix Park. It's a big spot.
Yeah, well, you had to. When you had children, they couldn't walk, so you had to put them in the pram to bring them there.
Yeah.
You know?
Gosh, amazing. But the images are fabulous, and I have a little clip that we're going to chance our arms and play. Hopefully it'll be okay, just to reminisce a little bit on Pope John Paul's visit. So if you have any memories, want to reminisce for us today of your visit, did you bring your pram at the time? Do let us know, and contact details, Roisín.
Oh yes, you can. The telephone is 014123456, and then again, if you're outside of Ireland or the north of Ireland, it's +353 4123456, and text or WhatsApp at 089 467 2000. And also outside of Ireland or the north of Ireland, it's +353 89 467 2000. And you could do info@radiomaria.ie if you want to email us. And then again, if you want to write a little note to us, it's Radio Maria Ireland, St. Anthony's Business Park, Ballymount Road, Dublin 22 or 7W2.
There you are, D22 or 7W2. Yes, very good. The postcode and the air code. And that's a handy air code if you're using Google Maps to come and visit us here.
Right.
You just put in D22 or 7W2 and it brings you right to where we are. So Google has all that built in.
Very
and you don't need any of the rest of the address. You know?
Right.
Amazing. So listen, thanks a million. There's been lovely feedback just flowing into us, and just to thank everyone for texting in and WhatsApping in and emailing in and so on as well. I don't have names for some of these, but Pat phoned in. She was listening in to the Chatechesis last night, the repeat, and was really touched by it. And Eileen texted in as well and was listening back late last night to the Chatechesis as well. Always a great program, but she said she was blown away yesterday, inspiring and challenging at the same time.
Wonderful.
And really yesterday I just had two little topics. I was using St. Paul's letter to the Ephesians, which has that lovely line, bear with one another charitably.
Yes,
and it's very challenging. So I was just chatting a bit about that, and Mary was mentioning at the cup of tea in the scone this morning downstairs that Bishop Dolan in Phoenix, who very sadly lost his sister and three of his siblings and a brother-in-law through taking their own lives. So I was just touching in on that, and how I'm hopeful that Radio Maria, with the likes of Professor Patricia Casey, can just touch in on the whole area of mental well-being and mental health. Very, very important. So, and it's a topic that kind of touches in on us all, and I think there probably isn't any family some way affected. So
it's really a dreadful thing to happen if it's a father or a mother to a family. It's really dreadful.
It is. So again, it was a sensitive little moment, I suppose. But again, glad to hear back from listeners. Thank you for that. Just that you're sort of helped by it too. And just another couple of these are fresh feedback here. Thanks for the lovely Mass this morning and the prayer of the faithful. Very good. Thanks for that. I'm not sure who sent that text in. And it says here, enjoyed your programme there now. Was out walking my dog here in Donegal and enjoyed your programme the other morning. You were talking about concerts in churches. Somebody had asked about that, music in church, and how does that work in a church? And again, in brief, my idea was, look, churches are consecrated places. They're meant for prayer and divine worship, not for secular music or secular events. Bring that to the hall next door, to the community centre, to wherever, and let the Lord, the sanctuary is a sacred place for the Holy Mass. It's not a stage.
That's true.
So again, so this listener asking that we keep her daughter in prayer, suffering from a broken heart, perhaps a broken relationship, maybe. Certainly. We'll put that in our prayer intention list, certainly, and we'll include her, and she mentions Deacon Don there as well. He'll include that in the Divine Mercy too. So very good. So you're out walking the dog in Donegal, so I hope it's not raining up there. The sun is shining down this side of the country, so, and I believe down in Watford.
Please God, it'll be lovely, Father. It's a lovely part of the country anyway.
It is. So while you still have the daylight, the clocks will be going back, I suppose, next week, is it, Roisín?
Yes.
Yeah. So we'll lose an hour of daylight in the evening time. So keep out walking the dog anyway and enjoy the daylight and the mild weather as long as you can. It'll be cold for long enough, I'm sure. So we're heading off to Waterford later on today and down to the parish of St. Joseph and St. Benildus. And if you would like to come to Mass there, I think St. Mary's next door as well. We're hoping to pop across to visit too. Please do drop in, pay us a visit.
Waterford, Father,
it's in the city.
Oh, in the city of the city. Oh, wonderful, yeah.
So please do come and see us, and we'll meet and greet and say hello. And very grateful indeed to the local clergy for allowing us to come and visit. And we hope to drop into a couple of nursing homes. We've had lovely encounters at the nursing homes. I was saying to Coit earlier on, she was asking us how the promotion was going, and there's been 5 lovely nursing homes that we've been into in Armagh, in Cavan, in Letterkenny, Ballahadreen, and this week in Killaloe. So scattered around the country, and lovely welcome from the staff and gathering the residents together, praying the rosary with them. Sure, delighted.
That's fantastic, Father. Yes. I know, because my mum was in a nursing home, and it can be really sad, they're not with their family, and it's really sad. Yeah.
And in a different environment and a little bit away from,
away from
their familiarity
their home
and
that they would have had for years and years,
That's it, because I'd say there's very few people who would really want to end their days in a nursing home.
Very few, absolutely.
Probably they'd rather be at home with family, but circumstances bring it about. My own dad, sure. Sadly, we managed as best we could for as long as we could, but he needed medical care that we just couldn't give, and so it inevitably.
Sure that he was all right. They looked after him.
Yeah, and he was well cared for there for about a year, I'd say, in a nursing home in the end. And it's hard. It is very hard. But just delighted, really, that something like Radio Maria, something as simple, really, as what we're doing, could be a little bit of companionship and
that's
support.
Fantastic. And then it'll encourage them, Father, to listen. Then they'll know. Because sometimes their mind is not as good as it used to be, and they'll be able to tune in and listen. Say,
exactly.
I remember Radio Maria now. I met Father.
That's it, and just have a new little group of praying friends.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we have several like that who come on air with us. Leo's below in a nursing home, and Nina and Sean. I don't know, Sean has been on with us from Glendon nursing home or not, but like that. If you're able and you'd like to and come on and chat with us or come and pray with us, well, listen,
fantastic.
Why not sign yourself up? And to be a nice little way to fill the day a small bit as well.
And I mean, you obviously have families if you're doing, you're that age, so you're passing it on to the children and to the grandchildren,
Correct, wonderful. Yes, a nice way of promoting the faith and being apostolic even in your advanced years. And I one of the nursing homes, I think, was the one in the one in Armagh. I'm not sure. I think it was Armagh. And it just mentioned, the story came to me to mention a lady who some years ago, this was ever before Radio Maria, I was on local radio in Cork, and this lady heard me. It was a little faith program on a Sunday evening, and this lady, Phyllis was her name, heard me, and she obviously liked the sound of the voice, and so she rang up and figured out where I was and asked me would I come and see her, which I did. She was in Cork City at the time, which was handy because I was going home to my parents at the time, so it was very easy to drop in and say hello. And when I dropped in first, she kind of went, oh, kind of face dropped. I was much younger than she thought I was, and she wanted confession and that, But yeah, we hit it off. We got chatting, and there was no bother. And I used to visit her regularly then. But I said to her, it occurred to me to mention the nice advice of Archbishop Fulton Sheen. He used to ask those who were sick or suffering. He said, would you mind offering a minute of your suffering for my ministry, for my work and the souls I've been meeting, just by way of offering it up. And I said that to Phyllis, and she said gladly she'd do that. And my impression certainly was that it brought about a little change for the better. That with all the suffering that she had, and again the confinement of the nursing home and everything that goes with it, she was able to offer it up, as it were, with my ministry in mind. And the next time I'd come to see her, she said, I was praying for you last night, which really meant I was doing a lot of suffering last night and offering it up for you. But and it certainly had its effect, I know, on my ministry. So I might suggest that to all our friends, who are sick or suffering.
Because you probably feel a bit that you can't do anything for anybody when you're in, But if you can do that, I mean, God, you're doing fantastic work.
You are. You're offering up to the Lord, and even just spare a minute and say, I'll do it for Radio Maria.
Yeah, mention us, absolutely.
Two thumbs up for that, if you can consider it and think of it. And of course for all the other intentions that you might like to offer up your sufferings for as well, because indeed it's a very valuable form of prayer in its own way,
And family, especially family, Father.
For family, sure, there's no end. We get those requests all the time from so many listeners praying for family members who have strayed or fallen off the
try and bring them all back into the church.
So don't underestimate the great value of your prayers and your sufferings, indeed. And the best image of all, of course, is Christ on the cross, or Our Lady at the foot of the cross, because she couldn't actually do anything about it there and then. The Lord couldn't move hand nor foot. It was when they were sort of immobilized, in that sense, when it seems they could physically do the least, was when they did the most for us. So that's a good idea of, like, when we're incapacitated in that way, that it's then that we can really do good for the Lord in the realm of the Spirit. And that's a bit like today's readings, the different charisms and gifts that in the letter of the Ephesians, some are called to be apostles, some evangelists, some teachers. And then there are those who I would say are suffering souls, or people who have heavy crosses to carry and play their part too. And bring out the good in others, because you need a bit of help, you need a bit of support, you need a bit of comfort and consolation. And it's good for us then to be able to, like for those who are caring for you, say, or accompanying you, that's good for us too.
Absolutely. Prayer, there's an answer to prayer, Father, is there for everybody. You just ask God first.
That's it. And what's the expression? Not to let your suffering be wasted. Don't waste good suffering.
That's true. Offers all up, think of the Lord, how much He suffered for us.
Sure. As best you can. Again, don't allow it to be a burden either, I suppose, really. So very good. So Pope St. John Paul II, I don't know if you know any facts about him. Sister Mara Rose was asking, her quiz question this morning was, how many saints did Pope St. John Paul II canonize?
I think a lot, Father. I think he did. I think a lot.
He certainly did. There was no end to them.
Yeah,
Yes.
I know now. I don't know how many, but I know that he did quite a lot.
I got to listen to most of the show, but I didn't get the answer to her question. And various guesses came in of how many. Was it hundreds or was it thousands? So let me just Google it here and see how many. And how many encyclicals did he write?
Gosh, I don't know that. I remember just seeing him, and I remember him just looking directly at me, Father.
Yes.
It was like as if, like, and he was a good bit away, but it was look as if he could just look at you.
And touch him and kind of...
Yeah, it was wonderful. I couldn't touch him, he was a good bit away, but it was like as if he was looking at everybody personally. It was wonderful.
Yes, amazing. That's a gift. He had a kind of a charisma. He was certainly gifted in media terms as well. He kind of had a great strong presence.
Yes.
Sort of visually, I suppose, a kind of charismatic presence, really.
Just knew you were in the company of a saint, obviously.
Now it tells me recent popes are known for canonizing in large numbers. John Paul II canonized 482 saints.
Wonderful.
And it says more than the 300 or so canonizations in the previous 600 years.
Oh my goodness.
So he kind of pushed the boundaries all of the park. Kind of hit it out of the park.
Fantastic.
482 saints. And it's interesting, it's very telling, because you might ask, well, why the sudden proliferation of saints, except that our times are extraordinarily challenging.
Oh, yes.
And God is sending these amazing witnesses to us for the times we're in.
Yes, that's true, Father.
And the church has grown, I suppose, too, is another factor. It's certainly, taken root in all 5 continents, and that would naturally generate increased numbers, I suppose, as well.
It's such a gift, Father, to know that God is there and He loves you. And even if you might not have known too much about it, He's still there and He still loves you.
Absolutely, and our task is to love Him back.
Absolutely,
and to do it,
carry His work on.
Yeah, and to do it heroically.
Yes,
which is what a saint does.
That's it. Okay.
And again, the heroism is not so much doing the big things that kind of draw a lot of attention. It's usually doing the small things heroically well. So how many countries did he travel to? Is a great question as well.
Quite a lot, Father, I'd say.
Amazing.
Yes.
He was the first non-Italian pope in 455 years.
Right. He was Polish, Father.
Polish, correct.
And he kind of knew all about that suffering and how the poor people suffered, and from the Germans and that,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he had and communism as well.
Yes.
So he brought a lot to the papacy by way of, and he was instrumental really in bringing down the Iron Curtain himself, and President Gorbachev, as it turns out, back in 1989. And you remember the story, the fact again in relation to Pope St. John Paul, his assassination attempt.
Oh yes, in the square in Rome.
In 1981, the 13th of May, which he survived.
Yes. And
the bullet from which they've taken out of his heart, or out of, it's now in the statue of Our Lady of Fatima.
Yes.
He went to Fatima, and the bullet was placed in the crown there.
And he went back to the man who shot him and forgave him and everything. Yes.
Extraordinary encounter,
yeah.
And I think he was in prison in Italy, the man. I think he went back to Turkey for a further prison sentence, I think. But he was a paid assassin, or like a professional hitman.
Yes.
And he was said to have said, I never miss. How did he not die?
Yeah.
And the truth was, he didn't miss. Like, he got the Pope near the heart, but like Pope John Paul said, look, one hand guided the bullet, and one hand shot the gun, another hand guided the bullet. That Our Lady's hand spared him. Extraordinary.
That's beautiful.
Extraordinary.
Yes.
And on the anniversary of the feast of Our Lady of Fatima, made it all the more kind of extraordinary. Absolutely extraordinary.
Absolutely.
But certainly he was very vocal and very strong and strident at times in his preaching, and would call a spade a spade.
Oh yes, he was. He was a wonderful man.
When he went to Drogheda there was a lovely statement. We have hopefully a little clip here lined up, but we only went to Drogheda. His words were, "On my knees, I beg you." You know, he's looking for peace in the north of Ireland, because I think the question was, could he visit the north during his time here?
Right.
And I think politically it just was, the timing wasn't, it was, because it was 1979 and the troubles were still ongoing,
It wasn't allowed, Father.
maybe in terms of security and politics, I'm not sure exactly, but he certainly played his part to, you know, use his authority to insist on peace and laying down of weapons, and
absolutely.
And so, you know, having, again, like you said, coming from Poland and having witnessed and grown up with
atrocities, Father.
Correct,
Dreadful.
correct, yeah, and knowing the value of peace, you know. So a most extraordinary man, and absolutely amazing output in terms of his writings and his travels and his
and even
talks.
his personality was always seemed to be smiling and happy. You know?
Yeah, most extraordinary, and kind of gifted, really gifted with a charism, and like St. Paul again this morning, as some are called to be teachers, prophets, evangelists. Well, he was certainly called to be a mega apostle, most extraordinary. So he was very involved in a lot of things and influences, and spoke out on all kinds of topics. One in particular, his Chatechesis every Wednesday, is now gathered together in a teaching called the Theology of the Body, which is a very insightful and very rich teaching of understanding the nature of our capacity for life and love, and human sexuality in particular, in response to the whole craziness of the 60s and onwards, and that the whole sexual revolution, as it's called.
They're gone crazy now, Father.
And things have got
absolutely crazy.
Even worse again now. But and we see the hurt and the damage and the fallout of all of that. You know, and St. John Paul is right. I mean, like you separate God out from, like, the theology of the body, that we're made in the image and likeness of God. If you push God out to the periphery, or you cancel God, then you lose sight of what our nature is, our origin and our destiny, and then our calling to a life of fullness in life and love. And we end up being self-indulgent in all kinds of ways that only hurt us and wound
and they don't bring
others.
any happiness. They think that people think they do, but it doesn't.
And it wounds people all around us, and does severe damage. And I do remember from his time here that one of the things he preached when he visited Ireland too, he was very strong on the idea of the dangers, the equal dangers of communism on the one hand, which was very prevalent, of course, in the 1970s, and still is in its own way, and capitalism on the other.
Money.
Yeah, that like you go into business, you make profit, you accumulate wealth, and that has its own attendant dangers in terms of faith. And one of his teachings was that, you know, if there's to be an increasing I suppose accumulation of wealth and profit and capitalism on the one hand, there should also be an increase of faith, morality and justice on the other, to balance it.
Absolutely.
Because if we accumulate wealth and well-being and all these things, and it's not shared with those who are in need, then you have a problem. It's what purpose is it all then?
No, it's not. It's not fair, Father. You think of and there's so much people suffering in the world now, poor and not able to feed themselves and all. They see it on, dreadful, Father.
So it was the equal dangers of communism and capitalism. We have a little tip lined up. We'll see. It's about 4 minutes or so that I just picked up on YouTube, his visit to the Phoenix Park, and Frank Patterson is singing on it as well. So we'll dip into it and we'll just see how it goes. But it's just a back in memory lane to Pope St. John Paul II. So great, Thomas, if you'd like to play that for us. Thank you. more visual than audio, but it was at Phoenix Park, non-stop clapping. I guess
it was fantastic. The amount of people that were there for them.
A million people.
There was huge.
People, yes, and Frank Patterson, of course, featured as one of the principal singers in liturgy and so on. But a huge event, absolutely enormous.
It was fabulous.
And his famous words was it the Phoenix Park? And were you there? Is the question, Roisín, where he said, "Young people of Ireland, I love you."
Yes.
Remember that?
Yes,
were you there?
I do. Yes. Yes. Oh,
and there was sustained applause. I think it went on for like 10 minutes or something.
Oh, he made you feel so welcome, Father. He really did, and he wasn't old too himself at the time.
No, I mean, that's the thing. And it was before his assassination attempt, so like he was very fresh and lively. And so I mean, he was elected cardinal in 1978, wasn't? Or sorry, Pope in 1978, and he was born in 1920, so it would have been 58.
Yes.
So he would have been my age.
Yeah. Oh,
when he was elected Pope.
A young man.
So he had plenty of energy about him still. He wasn't worn out at that stage.
Yeah, he was. He didn't look old at all, Father. I can still see him smiling at me.
Very fresh, very fresh, extraordinary man. But his writings are truly extraordinary, and I certainly believe he's merits and worthy of being declared a doctor of the Church in time. That I'm sure will come. And a few of his writings come to mind straight away. Certainly the Theology of the Body is epic in its content, because he was a philosopher, of course, and a theologian, I suppose, at the same time. But he wrote a lovely document on the Holy Eucharist. And I remember where I was at the time. I was in Middleton, and when that came out, I thought it was such a great document. I had it €1 each or £1 each, whatever the money was at the time, and it's all like hotcakes. It was very good. It's a lovely meditation on the Holy Eucharist. He had some other terrific documents on the Rosary, Rosarium Virginis Mariae, which is more of an apostolic letter, where he instituted the 5 new mysteries of the Rosary, the luminous mysteries. And Evangelium Vitae, another terrific document in relation to the culture of life and the sanctity of human life. And another monumental moral document would have been Veritatis Splendor, where it's called Veritas, meaning the truth, splendor, the splendor of the truth, where he kind of, again, in a nutshell, I suppose, but he articulates the importance of objective moral norms. In other words, that they're you see, this is part of our problem in the world today, where we've done away with morality is kind of based on feelings. If I feel it's okay, then
I know,
that's fine. And we've managed to somehow justify the destruction of unborn life in the womb through a kind of an argument of based on feelings and emotions and on hard cases. And
dreadful.
And if there isn't an objective morality, this was his point in Veritatis Splendor, say no, you simply taking human life is wrong. It's always wrong. It's never right. Whatever. You can't justify it. There may be extenuating circumstances if it's self-defense and so on, but you're not directly intending to take human life. It's always wrong. And that's what Veritatis Splendor was trying to articulate, that there is objective moral norms that you don't steal, don't kill. But if you abandon those in favor of a kind of it feels good, so I'll do it, or everybody else is doing it, or whatever other way you want to look at it, disaster. So Veritatis Splendor was a document with that idea in mind. And he wrote another lovely document for the formation of priests called Pastores Dabo Vobis, meaning I will give you pastors, I will give you shepherds. And it was a breakdown, or a kind of a rundown from start to finish of the best and good formation of students for the priesthood.
Beautiful.
And that came out in 1994, and I was just a year in the seminary when that document came out. So it was great.
That was a great help, I'd say.
Yeah, the seminary authorities took it on, and they tried to kind of share it with us and bring us into it,
Beautiful.
So an extraordinary output. I mean, that and so many other encyclical letters, apostolic exhortations, and just a litany. I've got like 3 volumes at home of all of his writings.
His work, my gosh.
Colossal.
Yeah.
And sure, listen, when would you be getting around to reading them all, do you know?
No, my gosh. Well, that's lovely, Father, to know all that.
Terrific, terrific output. So add to that then all the visits he made to so many countries around the world. Yeah, unbelievable.
Yeah.
And in some countries more than once. And the crowds that gathered wherever he went, in their hundreds of thousands, if not millions.
Absolutely.
Extraordinary. But his words here in Ireland were prophetic. Let me see if I can dig out a clip or two. We should probably put them in maybe as a jingle or two on Radio Maria. That comes to me, because they're epic, and such a huge saint and such a prophet of our own times. We should have those. We should drop those into our system to remind people.
And people who haven't met him or heard from him, or know about him, would be lovely to know about him, Father.
Yeah, you look at the young people coming in here to the studio. I'm sure they wouldn't have.
No.
I mean, Pope, when did he die? Was it 2005?
Yes, so wouldn't.
They would have been born, maybe some of our young people here around 2000 or the late 90s or whatever. They wouldn't have any knowledge of him at all.
Yes.
So we've been immensely privileged. Those of us who are of age, Roisín, maybe I should speak for myself.
Oh, I'm only too young, Father. I never tell a lie.
But we've lived through extraordinary popes. Popes. And canonized like St. John the 23rd.
Yes.
St. Paul the 6th now. He's blessed, or is he St. Pope John Paul the 1st? He's certainly blessed.
Yes, he died very young.
33 days of papacy was all he got. Yeah. And the curious thing was he named himself after his two predecessors, John the 23rd and Paul the 6th, so he called himself John Paul.
Right.
And they said it's a bit of an unusual name, but he insisted, I'm John Paul the 1st, he says. And he says, no, you can't be John Paul the 1st, because there has to be a second before you can be the first. You can't just call yourself the first. He says, no, there'll be another one after me.
Wow.
And it was as if he foretold that his papacy would be short-lived.
Wow.
And fair enough, Cardinal Wojtyła, of course, was elected, and John Paul II.
And he became Paul II, that's right.
John Paul II, we love you, was
Absolutely.
the expression.
Beautiful.
And of course the World Youth Days, again, epic moments that were inaugurated by Pope St. John Paul II. Millions of young people going to these, and I've been to 2 or 3 of them. I've been to Cologne, where it's I go to Krakow, I think, with the two. I've been to unbelievable gatherings. That's staggering stuff.
Especially needed, Father, for the young people nowadays. God love them. They're under so much pressure with so much things going on out there. So really and truly, they need all the help we can give them. For
sure. And Pope John Paul knew what he was doing, gathering the youth together. The future is in your hands.
Yes.
And that continues to this day. I mean, such an epic contribution to the life of the Church in the times that we're in. Most extraordinary.
Yes.
So, he knew how to use the media at the time, he made the most of his abilities as a former actor involved in theatre. Again, a charismatic presence, ingenious of a mind. And his consecration to Jesus through Mary, his motto, totus tuus.
Totally yours.
Totally yours. And that's the formula for those who consecrate themselves to Jesus through Mary. Totus tuus ego sum, et omnia mea tua sunt. So totus tuus ego sum, I am all yours. Et omnia mea, all that I have is yours. And de Montfort, of course, showing us that path that God has granted everything to Our Lady by entrusting Jesus to her. Yes. So we can entrust everything to her likewise in order to come back to God and to Jesus, of course.
Beautiful.
So that was the motto of his papacy. And if ever he was blessed, the fruitfulness of his labours are colossal, and far-reaching.
Yes.
So that when he died, they were gathering in St. Peter's Square, and the signs were up, and the people were chanting "Santo subito," meaning a saint now. Right. Canonize him
No.
today. Don't be waiting 5 years to see was he good enough for it. Get him, do it now.
Well, he was a saint when he was alive, Father, definitely.
Yeah, and they call that a sort of canonization by acclamation.
Right.
The people have decided. It doesn't need an investigation or an inquiry or any of these things.
So that's fabulous.
So he was not without his critics, of course, too. There were those who would have taken him to task. One of the things he initiated, which Pope Francis is continuing, is meeting with other world religions and heads of other world leaders in a kind of an ecumenical what would you call it, an outreach really to other religions, Muslims, Buddhists, Hindus and so on, and Jews particularly, and that kind of floored a lot of people when he started doing this sort of thing, wondering, are we looking at a watering down of the faith in some way?
No, I don't think so, Father, because I think Jesus came to everybody. He wants everybody to know God and to know him. And to know his church that he started. Correct.
And how do you begin, a conversation with all these people of other religions unless you sit down and you start a dialogue? You have to get to know each other.
Know how welcome they are, and and that God loves them, and just put them in the right direction.
Sure, and simply maybe not having to say very much, but just by the very witness of engaging in this sort of fraternity, building some bonds, and then starting that conversation to say, look, Christ is the beginning and the end, the Alpha and the Omega. And not with a view to watering down the faith or changing the doctrine or selling out the church, this idea. That's what the critics would suggest. But instead, presenting the faith as it is, and again allowing those who might not otherwise take the time to consider it.
Absolutely, because you say people who started up different faiths, Father, had their own reasons for doing them.
Yeah, and then when you begin to compare and contrast, and you hold up the light of Christ and I used to do this in school, I do it here on the radio often enough too. Who do you say I am? And in the light of other religions, we see there's nothing can compare with Jesus Christ, who lived, suffered, died and rose again. You're not going to meet that anywhere else. And so that speaks, as it were, for itself to all these other world religions. So we can see a kind of a prophetic dimension to that too. But again, it's just one of the areas where the Pope is taken to task, and Pope Francis is taken to task on these and all kinds of other things too, as if there's some sort of compromise going on. And I would certainly hope not, and I can't see it in the way others see it in that light.
No, there's not, Father. He's doing what Jesus wants them to do. Bring everybody into the Catholic Church, into the church, into the faith that God sent. That's one that someone else made up.
Correct. Or again, not trying to embrace a kind of syncretism, where you just mix them all in a bowl, and it's like whatever you're having yourself. But
no.
So now we better call it a halt, Roisín.
Time to go, Father.
Time flies when you're having a great conversation. So
flies, it did. My goodness.
It is. So thanks very much, Roisín. Thanks to all our friends, and do study and do get to know Pope St. John Paul II, especially our younger generation who would not have seen him in person. And his writings, his visits, his story is a most extraordinary one, a huge saint of our day. Thanks be to God. Great, I'll take my leave of you here, so thanks indeed. And again, Roisín, thank you so much. You'll be staying on to